This is the heartbeat of human services, a peek into the inspiring stories of our community and all things DHS. Join us.
I'm your host, Paola Hernandez, and welcome to the Heartbeat of Human Services. Today we are talking with Edlin, which I would love to introduce, and she is an amazing human being that I know personally, but also in the workplace. You've told me a little bit about what you do, so I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about who you are.
Hi guys, so like she said, my name is Edlin Blankenship. So I'm a paramedic EMS coordinator. I work for Kern County Public Health, the EMS division. So my role right now, pretty much what I do is I do training, education. I write the protocols and the policies that EMS personnel, so emergency medical services personnel, perform in the field. I'm also in charge of pediatrics, so that means children. I'm also in charge of hand heavy. So it's an app, a mobile app on the phone or tablet that first responders use to treat children in the field, because it's very stressful to treat in general. But with pediatrics, it comes with a challenge because for adults, we go based on a specific dosage throughout. But with kids, we go weight-based. So as they grow, right, the weight changes. So the dosage of the medications change. So it makes it a little bit harder to work in a stressful environment, especially when it's chaotic. So hopefully it makes it easier for them to treat the patient adequately. And I've been in EMS for approximately 10 years. I'm aging myself.
And you said that you worked for Kern Public Health, but under that it was the EMS, right?
EMS division, yeah. So Kern County
okay.
EMS.
Yeah.
So what I am is, it's called ALEMSA, like my agency. We're known as ALEMSA, so that stands for Local Emergency Medical Services Agency, and we're just a branch of the state, which is EMSA, right? A lot of acronyms, and that stands for Emergency Medical Services Authority. So what the EMSA does is it provides statewide coordination and leadership for planning, development, and implementation of local EMS systems. And again, we're a branch, so they pretty much have all these rules and regulations that they want us to follow, and we implement that at a local level to make sure it meets our needs for our county. I started working in the field because, little backstory, why I'm in EMS.
Yes, please tell us why you started.
When I was in high school, my cousin's son, in Hispanic culture, they're considered your nephews. He died, and I didn't understand why. I couldn't figure out, why does a little kid die? And again, he was pronounced dead at the home, so the coroner office came, took his body, stuff like that. And first responders took care of him, right? EMTs, paramedics. And so I was always interested in what happened. Why didn't he survive? And as I became an EMT paramedic, in paramedic school, my professor was actually the paramedic that first responded to my nephew.
Really?
And so, yeah.
So it
that
came back
gave
full
me,
circle.
Yeah, and it gave me a lot of closure. Obviously, he couldn't tell me a lot of detail because HIPAA, stuff like that. But just knowing him and the way he taught and everything, I knew he did what he could to save him.
Yeah.
So that, fulfilled, I don't know. It's like the starfish we were talking about earlier,
Yeah, and for those who, do you want to go ahead and tell that story real quick?
I don't remember the whole story though. How did it?
Yeah, before the podcast, for our listeners, we were talking about this quote, because I asked her beforehand, well, why do you do this? Because I've never asked you this. And you said you heard this quote of this little kid that we talked about in our previous podcast. And the quote said that this kid was throwing fish that he saw that were struggling on the shore of the beach, and that he was trying to throw each one of the fish back in. And whoever, a passerby, was saying, you can't save them all. But the kid said, but I could save this one. And so that's an impactful quote that we can relate to our jobs. It just, well, you're trying. You're trying to save at least one. One is enough. If you keep going down the line,
Yeah. Definitely. So it just reminded me of that, because he went from treating to training because he wanted to provide more well-rounded paramedics in the field that implementing changing more lives. So he gave me that closure, changing my life more than just educational. Again, the closure made a difference to me. So I was a little starfish.
That was a lot. I mean, it makes the work easier. I know, because your work is hard. It makes it easier when you have that purpose and, you're trying to better the lives of others, and specifically children we're talking about today. Today's podcast, we do want to go over, heat exhaustion. We want to talk about this summer heat and how to prevent things happening from kids in our community. We even have right now Purple Ribbon Month, which we are talking about our campaign all month long, talking about not leaving your child in a hot car. And so I brought you our expert to tell us a little bit more about the medical ends of things and prevention methods. And that's why I guess I want to start with heat exhaustion and why we should be so not worried, but cautious of leaving kids out in the heat. And specifically, I guess we could start with car exhaustion. If you could tell us more about preventative measures for that.
People assume that if they leave the car running or if they, crack the window, that they'll be okay. And it's not okay. It does, in 10 minutes, the car can go up. I believe it's like by 10 degrees, something like that was what I remember. And also in 10 minutes, especially in this weather, it can get up to where it could actually kill a person. That's all it takes. And what happens to their little bodies, specifically with children and also people that are elderly or have some sort of medical condition, their bodies can't regulate temperature like a healthy adult can. Because they can't regulate the temperature, what happens is that they heat up a little bit faster, right? I think it's about 5 times faster than an adult does. Their body heats up. So when their body gets overwhelmed with the heat, essentially what happens is they go into heat exhaustion, heat stroke, shock, organ failure, and then they die.
Yeah.
And with little kids, especially the small ones, they can't remove themselves from the situation. That's what makes it even more dangerous. They're feeling all these things, but they don't know how to remove the seatbelt, the strap. So they get stuck there, and that's what ultimately kills them.
And we haven't seen this in Kern County, right?
That I'm aware of, deaths, no. I have data. So this is a rough estimate. We've seen at least 2 first response. And again, this is all dispatch as heat-related. We've had 2 heat-related incidents, at least, that have been documented per our data. There could be more, because again, this is just a rough estimate, and this is as of 1 year. Yeah, from January 2023 till now. We've only had 2 documented so far. No deaths that I'm aware of.
Okay, yeah.
Thankfully.
Because I know on a national average, there's about 30-something deaths. 38 deaths per year of children who are left in hot cars. And I know I've read a couple of those news reports from different states. California, unfortunately, is a hot spot. So I think this information is super important. And it's called hyperthermia, right?
Yeah,
I always get
hypothermia,
I always get it confused with hypothermia.
Yeah, hyperthermia is heat, hypo is cold.
Okay, yeah. I got to remember that one. But is there any other things that we can do as bystanders if we do see something like this happen and you see a kid in a car?
Yeah, if you see a car, obviously your safety first, right? If the scene is unsafe, please do not go there, because we don't want to add to the problem. Just try to make sure you're safe. And if you're able to, yes, of course, call 911 immediately is the first thing you should do. And then try to get the child out of the heat environment, whether it be a car. Sometimes it happens when they're outside playing, right? Kids love to play outside and then don't realize that it's the hottest time of the day and they shouldn't be out there. So try to remove them of the environment, putting them in a shaded area. Now, mind you, I'm saying shaded area. I know that doesn't mean put them in the shade area that has like the cement and it's hot,
Yeah,
and
because that heat radiates
exactly,
from the
yeah.
asphalt. Yeah.
So make sure that the ground, if you lay them, it's not also hot, because that's just, again, adding to the temperature. You can also try to put a cold rag over their face, behind their neck. And main one is calling 911 and just waiting for them to get there. Now, if the kid, depending on their age, right, they may be able to drink, communicate. If they're able to drink, give them water. If they're confused, altered, stuff like that, just removing them from the situation and putting a cold rag would be enough, because for that they need a paramedic to be there and give them fluids and initiate other cooling techniques.
If somebody was unconscious, my first initial reaction would be to panic. So I feel like knowing these steps ahead of time will keep this from happening, or, help them out in that situation.
Yeah, and mind you too, like when you guys call 911, because you say unconscious, let's say this patient is unconscious, they may also initiate CPR. This is something to keep in mind, because what happens sometimes as bystanders, they're not medically trained, which you don't expect them to, right? So they don't know how to check a pulse adequately. Maybe they can't tell if the person is breathing adequately or not. And when someone does go into cardiac arrest, they have something called agonal respiration. So it looks like they're breathing, but they're not. They're dead. So
And their chest is compressing still?
so it's not so much that the chest is compressing. They're just like, they look like they're breathing because they go,
Oh no.
so they make like noises
That
and
is
they
so
look like they're trying
scary.
to breathe.
Yeah.
And so some people confuse that as breathing. And so they don't want to do CPR. So sometimes when you guys call 911 and you say they're unconscious, they may prompt you to do CPR. So just keep that in mind. That may also happen. And worst case scenario, let's say you do perform CPR and they are alive. They'll just have a sore chest, but they'll be alive, right? As opposed to not doing CPR and they were actually dead and now they don't survive because CPR wasn't initiated.
And I've been out at outreach events where you showed me how to do CPR chest compressions, because I've done it before, but it's always good to, keep learning about the new techniques. But when you told me you break a rib, that scares me. But, the other option is worse. So knowing CPR is definitely a great tool.
And the reason why you break the ribs, just so people understand why we do that, is because the ribs are there to protect your organs, and that includes your heart, right? So you have to be able to break that barrier to get to the heart, because what you're doing when you're doing CPR is you're manually pumping the heart. So you kind of need to break the chest again, or the ribs, to get to the heart, to be able to pump blood throughout the body and hopefully get some oxygen to the brain. Because after 5 minutes, the brain starts dying. At 10 minutes, they're considered brain dead.
Really?
No oxygen, yeah.
It's that short of a period.
So it's very important to do CPR.
This is important information, listeners. If you're out there, please take notes. But with that being said, I do want to get into our water safety.
Oh, yeah.
I know your public health does a lot with water safety. And so same thing as what we've talked about. I would love to know more about prevention, what we can do as bystanders, and just if there's any information we should know. I'm leaving the floor open to you.
Okay, yeah. So, something I found out as a mother that was really interesting is bath time is very dangerous. Most people think it's just the pool. Most people think it's like the river or lakes. But bath time is dangerous. From my own experience, my daughter, when she was about 1 year old, I was giving her a bath, and she could sit on her own, right? She was sitting, and she was playing with the water, and I was sitting there in the toilet watching her the whole time. I already bathed her. I was just letting her play for a little bit. And she would dunk her hair. So she would dunk her face forward, dunk her hair in the water, and then sit up. And she liked the way her hair splashed. So she kept doing that. She would put her hair in the water and then splash, or splash it forward, backwards. I don't know. Tilt her
I've
head
done
back.
that before when you're in the pool.
Yeah.
Kind of
Tilt your head back, and then the water just splashes everywhere. So she thought that was the funniest thing. And so she kept doing that, and I was watching her, just giggling with her. And then she dunked her face. I think it was too far down into the tub in the water. And mind you, the water was only up to like below her belly button. So it wasn't even that high up. But she put her whole face in the water. I can see that her face was in the water, and she wouldn't come back up. And it felt like forever, but it was a couple seconds. It was maybe 30 seconds.
But it looks strange.
Yeah, she was just sitting there in her face in the water, and she's not moving. And, I was like, is this really happening? What's happening right now? And so then I started saying her name. Her name is Noah. So I was like, Noah. And she's not coming up. I was like, what is happening right now? Is she really just drowning, So I grabbed her. Sure enough, she was drowning. And I'm literally watching this happen right before my eyes.
So at this time, were you in EMS?
Yeah.
So you knew the procedures to take?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I grabbed her, and she threw up a little bit of water, and I was like, what the heck? What is happening? I'm watching her, and she's doing this. So
I would have been in shock.
Yes, I definitely was. I'm a paramedic, but for those 5 minutes of the whole thing happening, I was more of a mom than I was a paramedic. I was definitely not thinking clearly.
Because after knowing you for a while, I feel like
Yeah.
you keep your cool in a lot of situations.
I was just not expecting my daughter in front of me potentially drowning, you know. So seeing her, she threw up. I checked her lung sounds. After that, it took me a second. I was like, okay, what do we do, right? So I started doing my things, and then, you know, thinking that she was fine. But that's just I think it's very important for everybody to understand that you also have to worry about bath time. Bath time is also equally dangerous, and with that, like, people leave their child for 5 seconds, whether it be 1-2-year-old, thinking they're okay to go grab a towel or to go grab something. So a great preventative with that is make sure you have everything with you when you are gonna, you know, have your baby in the tub for bath time. So anyway, sorry about the rambling about that, but I feel like that one's really important. People underestimate bath
and you did
time.
CPR, right? Or no, you just
on my daughter?
Yeah.
No, she didn't need it. So it was literally
she
like
just coughed
30
it up.
seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, she did the whole and then like threw up water. And
But in that case, if they don't cough up water, is that when you start CPR?
if she was unconscious, definitely start CPR. So with me, I because again I'm a paramedic, I would feel for her pulse, do the whole thing, see if she's breathing, she has a pulse. If not, then I would start CPR. But she was, I don't know if it was because she was too little to recognize she could sit up, you know, and like prevent herself from drowning. I'm not exactly sure. She's a baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, sitting her up, she threw everything up. She was fine. She acted like her normal self. Thank God. But I couldn't believe before my eyes this was happening. So yeah, very important. Bath time. Make sure you're not distracted. You're keeping an eye on your kids. You have everything with you before you even start bath time. And again, this is just for bath time. Make sure you also around your household, you don't have any buckets filled with water. Make sure they're all empty. Even after you give them a bath, make sure you drain the bathtub right away, because if you leave it, they'll get back in there somehow, especially if they like the water, you know?
Yeah.
And then something can happen there. Also, if you have any containers, anything that potentially could have water, make sure it's empty, especially when they're at that toddler age.
Do you see a lot of cases like this in Kern County?
Surprisingly, we do. I don't have specific data on bathtub drownings because we just did a general overview when we do grab data, but we have seen a few where they were in the bathtub, mom left, or parent, whoever it was, for 5 seconds to either answer the door, to grab a towel, and when they came back, the kid was submerged and unfortunately didn't make it. So we do see it, and that's why I'm bringing it up. And again, I experienced it myself, and I'm watching her throughout the whole time. So it happens more often than you think. And then again, with the safety stuff too, when it comes to pools, oceans, lake, you need to show your children that swimming in a pool is different than swimming in open water. Sometimes they think it's the same, but it's not, right? Because in oceans and seas, stuff like that, you have the water pooling, the currents. Or in the pool, they don't have that. So it's another thing that we need to teach our kids. Also make sure they wear Coast Guard approved life jackets, because they have different types, but you have to make sure they're Coast Guard approved to make sure that they're actually work efficiently and correctly.
Does that cover the whole body? Is that what that looks like?
I think it covers the whole chest.
Okay. That's what you should be doing.
Yeah, and it has, it ties around too, so they're secure and it won't come off. So that's why they prefer those over, you know, just any type of floaty or life vest. Those are the best ones to use. And then make sure you, of course, if you have a pool in your home, make sure you have a fence around the pool, right?
And that's illegal. Like, you legally have to have a fence, right?
Some people still don't, though.
Really?
Yeah, some people still don't. And even with the fence around it, we've had cases where the little kid opens the fence because toddlers are learning how to get into things. So even then, I always recommend having a system in your door. Like if your back door is open, it'll beep or something to notify you that someone's in the backyard, because you can never have too many. Yeah, we've had a couple of drownings where unfortunately everybody went inside. People thought the fence was closed, and somehow the toddler still got there and unfortunately drowned. But it's help again having double security, the beeping and the fence.
So be protected on all fronts.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh, and also very important, it's a program actually that we promote a lot. It's called Water Watcher. Water Watchers, have you heard of it? I've
definitely heard of it. I've seen a couple of the presentations Public Health has given. Yeah.
So, and that could be for any type of water. It could be open water. It could be in your pool. And pretty much what it is, it's a little lanyard that has a card saying that this person wearing the lanyard is going to watch the body of water for a specific time period. We normally suggest 15 minutes, but you guys can pick how long, the responsible adult's going to watch the children. And for that moment in time, we ask you not to be on your phone, not to be on a conversation, not to drink, put everything down and just watch the water with the kids or whoever it is for a
So
specific
maybe
amount
like
of
at
time.
a family function.
Yes, and
one of the adults.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm glad you bring that up because we always have drownings. Most of them, unfortunately, happen when there's a lot of people around because it's normal. They're normally distracted. There's drinking involved. Not always, but it happens.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing their own thing, and people think the kids are safe, and they're not.
Because there's people there, but they're not paying attention. Yeah.
And drowning is not what people think. People think that it's like this whole dramatic thing that we see on TV. They're splashing, they're screaming, they're crying for help. And again, my daughter, I swear I'm a great mom. But you learn a lot through your kids. I was with a group of friends, and so I can say firsthand, it's silent and deadly. We were watching her, and for a split second, she's a good kid, she can talk. She was playing in the shallow end, and she missed a step and sank right to the bottom. We didn't even hear a noise. The good thing is that we were all still kind of paying attention to her, especially the people that were facing her direction. So they immediately saw it and grabbed her and picked her up. But we didn't hear, and there was no splashing. She didn't cry, nothing. It was literally like a split second. She fell. We noticed it, luckily, and were able to grab her and pull her back out. And she was fine.
She was probably like, "Oh, it's nothing." A little kid.
Honestly, she's a trooper.
Know.
She's a great kid. But it happens. I'm just trying to say it happens to everybody. It's happened to me. All that matters is as long as you're keeping track of them and you're watching them, and they should be fine. Even if they have these little incidents, you're there to pick them up, right? That's what the water watcher's for. Now, if you're not paying attention and you don't catch it on time, that's when they drown, and that's when they, die. And in Kern County so far, from our data, and again, this is a rough estimate, we have at least 11 drownings documented. That doesn't mean that all 11 drowning cases that they died. That just means that that's what we have documented so far. And it doesn't just happen to kids. I've had personal experience. I've had when I was younger, a male that was around my age that drowned, and he was an experienced swimmer. And it was in the river. He was an experienced swimmer, and he unfortunately drowned. And it was, I guess for me, it was a traumatic in the sense because I saw myself. He's my age. He looks healthy and strong, and it happened to him. So you're like, dang, it really can't happen to anybody, right?
Yeah. And you mentioning the Kern River, that's the next thing I want to talk about too, because I know we do have a lot of drownings there, and you did mention that open bodies of water are way different, and I truly believe that. And I am myself a person who goes down the Kern River and floats every, this time of year in the summer. So I want you to also tell us if you have any tips for that, or if you have any data that could kind of give us make us more aware of what we're getting ourselves into before we step into that body of water. Because that river, we call it the Big Kern River, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, because the water's different, definitely always wear a life jacket. And the one that I said earlier, the Coast Guard approved life jackets, make sure they're that. Again, teach your children the difference between swimming in a pool or an open body of water. And then also teach them to swim with a buddy, because sometimes it helps when they're not swimming by themselves because there's someone playing with them, watching them, hopefully can yell if something is going on, something's wrong. And of course, the water watcher. Another thing too, I know that a lot of adults like to do sometimes is drink while they're in the water, and that's not a very good idea because one, you get dehydrated pretty quickly, so now you run the risk of dehydration, heat exhaustion, stuff like that. And now you're also impaired, you're not thinking correctly, your coordination isn't up to par, you're probably a little more fatigued, so there's that problem
and I've seen the cases happen from whitewater rafting, the actual licensed companies that go out there, and it's happened to, some of the people who are floating with them. So that tells you enough that even with a helmet and all this gear that it can still happen to you.
Yeah, exactly. It can happen to anyone. You just need to be very careful. Again, and then the alcohol doesn't help. So just, you guys have to try to be as safe as you can, wear life jackets. Yeah, and like I said, you can try all the preventatives, but still can be a risk being there
Yeah.
in general. But
You went over some great information, and I hope all our listeners out there were able to learn something today. You are a wealth of knowledge, so I thank you
Aw.
for being on our podcast today, Edlin. And with that, I will let you say goodbye if you have any last words.
I do actually just want to give you some more information. If you guys are interested in learning CPR, hands-on CPR, we teach it for free at 1800 Mount Vernon Avenue.
Yeah, we could put that link in our podcast just to make sure everyone has that.
I want to make sure everybody's trained because, again, it does make a difference if you guys are CPR trained. Statistics show that you're more likely to perform CPR on a loved one, right? So you want to make sure that you're given the proper tools to be able to do it efficiently and correctly to save a life. We also do give the water watcher lanyards for free. Same location. You guys can come anytime from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Just ask for whichever program you're interested in, and we'll come down, either CPR, train you, or give you the Water Watchers lanyard. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here today. I had a great time.
Yeah, I'll definitely be getting that information from you, so thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Heartbeat of Human Services podcast today. We hope you'll join us next time.